Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 9, Episode 102. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for tuning in this Friday, about 2 weeks out for the NFL Draft. Dave, and we just recorded our interview with Dave T. Thomas, and I need a nap.
I needed a shower. Holy moly. I mean, people have heard him before, and if you have, you know what we're talking about here. If you haven't heard Dave T before and you're new to the show, you've been warned. I guess that's the best way to say it. So I don't want to. In
a good way. You've been warned. In a good way.
Yeah. You've been warned in a good way. We were just talking. You know, he's kind of cult hero status when it comes to this show. And as I tell during the interview a couple times there, you know, Dave T came across him. I think about 2011 was the first time that he came on the show. So I guess this makes it like his 9th appearance when it comes to pre-draft talk. He sends Alex and I a ton of scouting reports that he does for Scouting Services Inc. Over the years. Just an unreal recall. If you think I'm an idiot savant, I mean, Dave T really 3 times that the amount of recall that this guy has. So yeah, you know, everybody asks, when's Dave T coming on the podcast? Well, today is the day.
Yes, it is. And to be clear, if you're not familiar with Dave T. Thomas, I mean, he's a guy that teams rely on, that they'll consult with him, they'll get his information, his reports. So this is a guy that has, you know, his fingerprint on the NFL and in scouting circles. So, you know, that information you're getting is valuable in top-level stuff. So, yeah, it's about an hour interview, as I'm sure you probably see by the length of this podcast. And we go through literally position group by position group and talk about some of the best prospects, some of the overrated ones, and definitely some of the sleepers, and of course all kind of in case with what the Steelers have looked at and what the Steelers need. So we're going to get touch on one topic here before we get to the interview, and just kind of go through the Steelers pre-draft visits since we last talked, Dave. We're up to now 27 of the 30, not including the 3 local guys, so that's 30 in total, but they don't count against the allotted 30. So we'll work backwards for my sake of it, Dave, and we'll start with the guy that's coming in today, Toledo receiver Deontay Johnson. Toledo's got a lot of receivers. This guy's probably a late day 3 candidate, but a smaller, shiftier with return value.
Yeah, and isn't this a guy, I mean, where's he best suited to play? I mean, have you watched much on him? I know Daniel's broken him down. I haven't looked too terribly much at him, but I mean, he was, look, you want to talk about guys that kind of start checking a few boxes here. I think Deontay Johnson was a East-West Shrine Game guy on top of everything else there. So now that he's had a visit, you know, maybe he's a guy that you address later on in the draft.
Yeah, not an elite speed, not an elite athlete guy, probably a more of that quick than fast type of candidate, but somebody in Daniel's report that likes his, you know, route running in general, likes his hands, ability to track the football, you know, yards after catch. That's the kind of guy you're getting with him. Also an underclassman, so a junior, another guy you want to circle back, get some homework on because he wasn't on the radar for the junior pro days last year and in the scouting services, so someone you want to look at. But we know Daryl Drake was at Toledo's pro day. They got 3 really talented receivers there to check out. Johnson's probably going to go 3rd of the 3, but, you know, return value as well with the guy that they brought in yesterday, and that's probably a good segue into talking about who they brought in on Thursday. And this is a guy that I had never heard of before, and kind of a sleeper, and actually Dave T mentioned him in the podcast, but Florida Atlantic running back / return man Kareth White Jr., who's, again, looking at a late day 3 UDFA, probably primarily return guy.
And the thing I was asking about Deontay, I think he plays some X there, right, at Toledo?
Yeah, I'll have to go. I'm going through his report right now, Daniel's report on him. I think he kind of played all over. I'm going to guess he's going to find a home in the slot at the next level, though.
All right. And the kid out of Florida Atlantic there, look, I mean, if the Steelers want a guy that can, you know, do a lot of different things and wear a lot of different hats later on in the draft, that includes doing some kick returns, that's this White kid.
Yeah, he was a guy with 2 career kick return touchdowns. Was the backup his whole career. He backed up Devin Singletary at Florida Atlantic this year. Got about 130 carries. The speed is real. I mean, he ran I think 4.36 at his pro day, 42-inch vert. Some numbers to pop, and I think that's a compelling reason to bring him in for a visit. But I looked at his tape. I did the profile on him this morning. And while I see that elite speed, I see really a straight line kind of guy without a lot of, change of direction ability, not much power at all. Wasn't really used in the receiving game again. Played fresh, got to play with that 4.36 speed to get going against some tired defenses. So I see him as even a probably worse version of Tony Pollard, who we've talked about before. And I know that you're probably a little higher on Pollard than I am. It sounds like, White Jr. could be a late, draft pick with that last 6th round pick or 7th round selection. I probably wouldn't draft him, but the speed is legit, and that's the reason why I think you're looking at Kerrith White Jr.
And they certainly have brought in a lot of running backs. You talk about Mike Weber out of Ohio State, Miles Sanders, local kid that didn't count against the 30 there. Damian Harris out of Alabama, probably going to be one of the earlier running backs taken. Jordan Scarlett out of Florida, Travis Homer out of Miami, and then Kerrith White out of Florida Atlantic as well too. Which you could put a lot of slashes, I think, when it comes to White. Not really kind of a full running back, if you will, because he wears so many hats there at Florida Atlantic. But without a doubt, I think this team is set to address this running back position during the draft, and ahead of the process starting, I'm not so sure I would have bet on that.
Yeah, me neither. Is there any 1 or 2 names you're looking at running back guys they brought in, or just guys in general that you think this team really could? You envision of being a Pittsburgh Steeler?
Well, I think any guy on that list that you put together,
Is there anyone that rises above the others? Is there anyone that you think takes?
I have to. What I need to do because of concentrating so much on the defensive side of football. I haven't gone in depth with the running backs like I have on the offensive side of football with wide receiver or tight end for that matter. So this coming weekend while the Masters is on, I think I'm going to dive into a couple of these guys that like Alex Barn, who just made your cut of players that look for, and a couple of those fringe guys like the kid out of Miami. I think is a very interesting kid, and Travis Homer. I believe he kind of fit the profile, just missed it as well. And and I guess it would be a perfect time to kind of indicate that you went back through the pro day tape of a few schools, and in fact, Kevin Colbert was at the Michigan State Pro Day, and I think that's a huge look. We thought maybe we saw him, but I think the other tape that you pulled up and the still shot that you pulled up kind of matches up for sure that was Kevin Colbert. And with having him there at that Michigan State Pro Day, I think that opens up for some serious talk about Justin Lane, the cornerback there, who we already kind of thought maybe the Steelers would have quite a bit of interest here, and then of course LJ, the running back there.
Yeah, I almost forgot about that with how crazy it's been. I can say with 100% confidence that was Kevin Colbert at Michigan State. I thought he was before. I had to go through like an hour of video and articles to find him again, but I did. So he was at Michigan State. And while you're watching the greens at the Masters, I think LJ Scott, wearing green, could be a guy that wears black and gold. I know he wasn't brought in for a pre-draft visit, but I think he has a lot of Bell comparisons. I know the ankle injury he suffered this year really slowed him down, but I think you look at his junior tape and the overall body of work, he's not going to be a dynamic kind of guy, but I think someone that's kind of a downhill runner that shows some patience, and I think has good hands. He didn't catch a lot of passes, but I think when he was asked to, I thought he caught the ball well. And I'll give you another name that was not brought in for a visit, but they sent Eddie Faulkner to his pro day, Benny Snell. You mentioned him before, and I got to think about Benny Snell, and I think he fits the Pittsburgh Steeler. They love production. He's got it in spades. They like football bloodlines. He's got it in spades. That's a guy that helped turn around that Kentucky program. I really think that, round 4, round 5, you're going to hear Benny Snell's name called for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, so those are at least 3 names that I hope to kind of dive into a little bit more deeper tape. Kind of look at the things that how are they able to avoid tackle tips maybe behind the line of scrimmage. Look, you can put on running backs is so hard to judge because you just want to look at how they do out once they hit the hole and all. But a big thing, and at least one of the things that Le'Veon Bell excelled at was his ability to avoid tackles behind the line of scrimmage, and I think that's a very, very key factor. And then, of course, pass protection is something else we need to look at with these. But look, I mean, with this many running backs, and what's been the trend in the past, Alex, when it comes to position groups that they bring in for visits here, with one really being having heavy numbers at. I mean, they usually don't necessarily take that position early in the draft, but they do address it at some point.
Yeah, there's a pretty strong correlation. I did this study 2 years ago. Now, it didn't work with inside linebacker last year. They brought in a ton of inside linebackers and ultimately didn't take one. They wanted to take, one of the top guys, and it didn't happen, so they punted on the position. But generally speaking, there is a pretty strong correlation there. While we're talking about where Kevin Colbert's been, since you mentioned Michigan State, we should mention where else he's been, too. We found him at a 10th pro day, and this came from a reader, so I appreciate him passing it along to us. But he was at Houston's pro day, and, that's a little surprising, but I look at a guy like, obviously there's Ed Oliver, but I think someone like Isaiah Johnson could really be in play for Pittsburgh in round 3.
Yeah, big corner in Isaiah. And wasn't Isaiah Johnson a Senior Bowl guy?
I have to look. I don't remember the Senior Bowl roster, but he might have been.
I believe Isaiah Johnson was an All-Star game, and I think it was Senior Bowl on top of it.
It looks like he was. Yeah, he was there.
Not mistaken. So, look, when we always try to circle back around to some of these things that are kind of at least Blues Clues in our case when it comes to several of these guys. Obviously having Kevin Colbert at your pro day for is important. Really, any round. I think is some of the most recent studies that you have done. So you put that in the back of your mind. I think some of these measurable studies that you've done, I think a lot of them, hold a lot of water when it comes to these guys. And then, I hate to keep reiterating it, but combine, definitely guys that go to the combine are in play, and that's a Captain Obvious one there. But don't forget to double check if any of these guys have played in either the Senior Bowl, the East-West Shrine Game, or the NFLPA Bowl, because I think that bears a lot of weight in trying to figure this out as well too. So there's so many different things when you're putting your final mock draft together, or just a big board in general when you try to come to building a list of, let's say, 100 guys that you think the Steelers might draft from. Make sure you throw all those things into the equation here, because as much as many of us like to identify deep sleepers and these small school kids and the guy that didn't go to the combine that has gaudy spark numbers, that's not necessarily the way they go. But I think there's enough clues out there with what Kevin Colbert and the Steelers have done over the years that one should be able to put together a fairly thorough 100-player or even less, 75-player big board, and be able to guess 90% of the guys that the Steelers will draft out of that group of players.
Let me give you one other stat I researched the other day. Of the last 8 second-round picks for Pittsburgh, of the last 8, 7 of them have either come in for a pre-draft visit or have had Tomlin or Colbert at their pro day. So if you want to look at second-round picks, you're looking at the guys that have come in for a visit or have had one of the big decision makers at their pro day. The only exception, of course, is Juju. So we know how important it is for first round, but for second round, I think you have a really finite list of guys. And maybe Justin Lane's going to be on it if he gets to 52, maybe not. But that second round influence, you either got to come in for Pittsburgh or Colbert Tomlin has to get eyes on you at your pro day.
Yeah, and real quick, and we brought this up to I don't want to spoil too much of the interview here, but does Justin Lane become a guy possibly at 20 overall now?
I wouldn't support it. I'm not a huge Justin Lane fan. I get some of the talent, but I see an average speed guy with stiffness, and it worries me. He checks the boxes, so I'm not going to pretend like there's no chance. You're talking underclassmen, Power 5, good character. There's obvious interest there. And they had, I think, Terrell Austin and Eddie Faulkner at Michigan State's pro day, so they sent a couple guys. 20 is too rich for me. If he falls to 52, the conversation becomes a lot different. I still wouldn't love Justin Lane, but I couldn't pull the trigger. 20, especially if Greedy and especially if Byron Murphy's there.
Yeah, and Byron Murphy is a guy they brought in for a pre-draft visit, obviously, along with Baker. And who's let's see, we ought to finish out Oliver, the tight end out of San Jose State. was brought in for a pre-draft visit. I guess that's not too overly surprising there when you look at kind of what he's done on tape. And then the left guard out of LSU who battled, I think, a knee injury last year. That he ended up being a combine snub, if you will. A good kid. I think he was a captain there at LSU as well too. Brumfield.
Yeah, Garrett Brumfield going to be a probably undrafted guy. Maybe with that 7th round pick, you could go with him. Oliver's early day 3. It sounds like a more athletic tight end, another West Coast guy that they're going to bring in. Some other names they brought in too since we've last talked. Here's a really interesting one: Stefan Denmark from Valdosta State. Rare to get those small schoolers in, but a 6'3" guy that runs 4.4. It's impressive.
And I think we've heard that he's going to be brought in. Has he been brought in?
Not official, but Aaron Wilson, a pretty credible reporter, said that he's going to come in. So I'm assuming he is.
All right. So either we have missed him or that's going to happen Saturday, because I think the pre-draft visits have to come to a close, I think, this weekend.
The 16th or 17th, one of the 2 days.
Is it? Okay, so maybe they do have into early next week. So maybe we're due, and we're due another, what, 3 or 4 according to the list? 3?
They got 3. Well, not including Denmark, there's 4 spots left. Including him, it's 27 out of 30.
All right, so hopefully by the beginning of next week we get those, and yeah, Denmark is a guy you briefly look at his measurables. You look at he was a wide receiver turned cornerback, really excelled quickly on the defensive side of the football there. So this is a guy could be a later round undrafted free agent. I mean, I think he's going to end up being drafted later in the draft, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see if he officially comes in, which he should.
Yeah, but non-combine, and that's pretty rare. But the fact they're bringing him in shows that there's clear interest in small school guys. So we need, but there's a good scouting report actually. Nick Farbar did it a couple weeks ago, well before Denmark was reported, and broke down his tape. So it had tip to him. 2 other names I believe that came in that we haven't talked about yet, but aren't any surprises in the least. Texas defensive end edge Charles Omenihu and LSU tight end Foster Moreau have come in for pre-draft visits. That was Tuesday.
Yeah, and I think my feeling on both those guys is they're being maybe rated a round or 2 higher than maybe what they should be. I mean, is he really a 2nd-round guy? I kind of have more as a 3rd, 4th-round guy. And Moreau, look, you look at his tight end class and all. Moreau definitely fits what the Steelers do, and it's hard for me to not have him in my mock draft, but I have him still more as a 4th or 5th round guy, whereas some people I think have him as high as maybe as a 3rd round guy now. So, obviously that stuff's irrelevant. If the Steelers like a guy, they have no issue pulling the trigger on a guy maybe a round too early.
Yeah, I think for me personally, his floor, talking about Foster Moreau, was 122. I don't think you're going to get him any farther back than that. I could see him go as high as 83. So that's kind of the range that I've been with him. But he feels like a Steeler. He feels like the next Jesse James.
And Omenihu too, really you look at what look at where he is in his development, how much further he has to come, plus what he's done, what he's put on tape so far. I think I've got a contextualization up on him already, but you could definitely see him in a Steelers uniform. I think round 2's a little too rich for him, but man, if you keep both of your 3rd round picks, I could see a 3rd round pick being spent on him.
Yeah, I've had the hardest time trying to figure out where this guy's going to get drafted. I've heard as high as 20. I've heard 4th round. So I really can't give you a good gauge. But if you get him in the 3rd round, I think that would probably make the most sense as that middle ground.
I don't see him as an outside linebacker candidate like some people do. I think he's a full-fledged, 3-4-5 technique. I think he's the kind of guy that you put him right at 302 pounds and leave him there.
What's he, 280 now? I think he's 280.
Yeah, I think he played a little bit heavier than that too, didn't he?
Did he? I don't know. Did he? I just know what he came in at. Yeah, he's a scheme versatile guy, and in the era where the schemes get blurred, I think he can find a home. He gets after the quarterback. You'll find a place for him. That's kind of my mentality. Yeah, Dave, any other tight ends that make sense? I know we've gotten really locked on Foster Moreau, and I have too. But I feel like we have to look at some other candidates as well. And obviously, they brought in guys like Josh Oliver.
Well, I think Oliver most definitely is a guy. I mean, now that we have confirmed, him being brought in for a pre-draft visit, you got to have him in your sights at this point too. And when you look at a few other ones, we haven't talked a lot about Irv Smith Jr., but I just think that I think he's just going to be off the board. I wouldn't be surprised if Irv Smith Jr. goes before Fant personally.
Wow.
Caleb Wilson. You look at his UCLA tape, because who was I just looking at recently on the defensive side of the ball, and I had to watch, I forget who it was. I had to watch some UCLA tape there. Oh, I think it was, I was doing some research on Ugo, the safety out of Oregon there, and ended up watching a little bit of Caleb Wilson there. Not more of a mid-round guy. I don't view him as maybe the blocker as some people do. Obviously, Jace Sternberger, Kevin Colbert was at that pro day, so I don't know how much you can read into that. And a guy that Dave T will tell us about during our interview, Dawson Knox.
Yeah, Dawson Knox is a good name. I think he's probably going to go a little bit higher than where the Steelers were at, similar to Irv Smith. But yeah, Elise Mack from Notre Dame, Trevon Wesco from West Virginia, and then even a guy I started watching last night who I know tested terribly at the Combine, but Isaac Natu at Georgia, I think, is a fairly prototypical Steelers tight end.
And, boy, you could go down a list here. Yeah, Natu, what does he go, 6'3", 240, right around in there. Not a big drive blocker from what I remember when it.
I liked his blocking. I thought he actually did a nice job at it. I like his effort, tenacity.
Pretty route savvy overall, and has some fluidity to his game out. As a route runner from the limited notes that I have on him already there. So look, we think they're going to draft a running back. We think they're going to draft a tight end. We think they're going to draft a wide receiver. Those are at least 3 offensive positions, and we know that they're probably going to draft an inside linebacker, probably a defensive lineman, a corner. We would hope an edge here. So I don't know. You got 10 picks. I still think that they move a pick or two somewhere. I will be surprised if we're talking about 10 new Steelers after the draft. I still think the number's going to come in 7 or 8.
And I think the roster construction indicates that they've, I know the AF folding kind of was a surprise, but they're sitting at 76 guys right now on the roster. You throw in 10 draft picks, that's 86. They usually bring in about 10 UDFAs, 96 for a 90-man roster. I mean, yeah, you could cut down your roster from 96 to 90, but I think it's probably more likely they're going to make 1 or 2 trade-ups in this draft.
You think anybody's listened to a word we've said in the first?
Nope, they've scrolled through. So let's talk about our friends at Robinhood, and then we'll get into the Dave T interview.
Yeah, absolutely. Robinhood's back advertising with us, and if you're unfamiliar with them, Robinhood is an investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos, all commission-free. While other brokerages charge up to $10 for every trade, Robinhood doesn't charge any commission fees, so you can trade stocks and keep all of your profits. Plus, there's no account minimum deposit needed to get started, so you can start investing at any level. The simple, intuitive design of Robinhood makes investing easy for newcomers and experts alike. View easy-to-understand charts and market data and place a trade in just 4 taps on your smartphone. You can also view stock collections, such as 100 Most Popular. With Robinhood, you can learn how to invest in the market as you build your portfolio. Discover new stocks, track your favorite companies, and get custom notifications for price movements so you never miss the right moment to invest. Robinhood now is giving listeners of the Terrible Podcast a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help you build your portfolio. To get that free stock, sign up. You got to sign up at Steelers.Robinhood.com. Make sure you go to Steelers.Robinhood.com. And you can sign up to get your free stocks such as Apple, Ford, and Sprint. I have used the Robinhood app for, I guess, going on 4 years now. I absolutely love it. It's the only way that I buy and sell stocks now online is through the Robinhood app. So we appreciate having them back, and we'll have them back as a sponsor, I believe, next month as well, too. And once again, go to Steelers.Robinhood.com. All right, Alex, I guess now we should get to our hour-long interview with Dave T. Thomas. Here it is. Okay, welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. You know what time it is? The time of year. This time of year, we always get people asking, when are you going to have Dave T. Thomas on? Well, we never forget what a monumental show that is, and that day is actually today. Dave T. Thomas owns Scouting Services Inc. He has been, the first time I was looking back, he was on the show was 2011. So I believe this will make his 9th appearance during draft season on the Terrible Podcast here once again. And he's really the only guest that we advise listeners to make sure you stretch before you listen to him, because he's that intense. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome back to the show a guy that really needs no introduction whatsoever. That's Dave T. Thomas. Dave, welcome back to the Terrible Podcast.
Hey, big guy. Well, after 51 years of doing this for the league, I mean, when they hired me, I couldn't even drive a car, and now all of a sudden, here I am. I'm in year 51. I'm telling you one thing, two things I'm looking at is heaven doesn't want me, hell's afraid I take over, but at least I know what these teams are going to do.
All right, well, let me and Alex put our seatbelts on here, and while we do that, look, we've had so many listeners come and go over the years, and like I said, your first appearance on the show was in 2011. Why don't you bring everybody up to kind of speed real quick? Give a quick bio on Dave T. Thomas, how young you got started, who you worked for originally, and how you got to where you're at right now, as condensed as possible.
Well, actually, I started in basketball at age 4. My uncle was a scout in the basketball industry, knew Al Davis. So 4 years old, he comes off the road, and I had all of these scores and charts all sitting down, and he looked at me and he said, "Kid, you're going on the road with me." Age 13, I'm out at Thousand Oaks, sitting there watching Al's scouts pulling up all of these newspaper clippings, and I started laughing. Al says to me, "What the hell are you laughing about, son?" I says, "If this is how your scouts go ahead about their business, no wonder why you can't find players out there." He tells me, "Show me what you could do." Following year, I show up with a 4,000-page report. Now, mind you, folks, this is 1967. This was all done in pen and paper. Al hired me on the spot, and the rest was history. I haven't been able to leave the industry since because, like I say, I'm smart enough to know how to make a lot of money in a stupid man's sport.
How do you view things have changed, if any, in scouting over the years?
It's like the fashion industry. You have to go with the trend. If somebody's hot with something, everybody else wants to copy it, which is going to be the case what I'm going to be showing on talking about on the show today, and why logic makes sense for Pittsburgh Steelers to keep on addressing their secondary. Why? Look at the wide receivers around the league right now, Dave. I mean, you're going out there and looking at these 6 feet tall plus wide receivers. We haven't seen that before. Look at the combines. 47 wide receivers go in the combines. 34 of them are 6 feet or bigger. 35 cornerbacks go into the combines. 21 of them were 6 feet or bigger. We need to look at the receivers coming in and be able to defend against them. And the last time I checked, Pittsburgh's going to end up playing Cleveland twice a year. And, they got the little blip over there, and they got the big guy in Landry, too.
All right, we'll talk a little bit about the top. The Steelers have already brought in Byron Murphy for a pre-draft visit, DeAndre Baker for a pre-draft visit. There's been, they were at the LSU Pro Day to see Greedy go through the paces. Talk about those 3 top cornerbacks in the class.
Oh, I love Murph. Murph's my boy, as they say from Brooklyn, this kid is just solidly built frame, well-defined upper and lower body. Outstanding athletes. He's quite a surprise with the way that he hits people, because here I go talking about I want a 6-foot-tall cornerback, and he's only 5'10", 6. He's a truly efficient player, effectively uses his speed and quickness to make plays on the ball and fight. But the thing is, he's great impacting in man coverage because he plays with aggression, brute force. He's able to impede the route's progress. Outstanding ability, guys, man, to change direction. No wasted steps in his movements. Great body control and adjustment skills to easily combat those big receivers during the jump ball situations. You know my affection towards the physical type of cornerbacks. Hell, my discovery was on your team for years, and Ike Taylor. I think the missing element for the Pittsburgh Steelers in their secondary right now, they need an enforcer. Hey, listen, the kid that I told you guys about last year, Edmonds, he's a solid hitter. Still, they got to address the secondary. They brought a kid in last week from the AAF, and I'm praying to dear God they sign him because he reminds me a lot of Thomas Davis. Tyson Graham. This kid could play strong safety. He could come up and play the cover 2 linebacker position. They got to address the defense now. Everybody's saying go for a receiver to replace AB. I say you could wait till round 2 because in round 2 is going to be where the rush is to go get those big wideouts.
Yeah, I think Tyson Graham couldn't pass the physical, I think, with the neck injury that he had suffered there in one of those games with, I think it was the Atlanta Legends there.
That's what happened there. I saw they brought him in and nothing happened. I was just hoping that, they would have pulled the trigger because that was the best safety in the AAF.
Quick thoughts on Baker and Greedy?
Well, Baker is, how can I put it, as physical as Murphy is. The thing that you get with Baker out there on the football field, it's like watching Deshae Townsend plus. This is a kid, good time speed, quick feet and ability to change direction, very fluid and smooth in his movements. You look at what he does, that natural ability to redirect and flip his hips. That's why he stays with the receivers on the deep routes. He recovers nicely when his opponent manages to get behind him. Even when he gets tall in his pass drops, he's got a good base behind him. He's a short strider, great second gear and burst to close in an instant. He's probably the chess master while we're talking about a bunch of checker players at the cornerback position. Very instinctive ball player. But still, here's another guy under 6 feet tall. However, his coverage abilities itself, I would say he's probably the best cornerback that Georgia has kicked out in quite some time.
Dave, another possible first-round corner. Dave, Brian, and I have talked about him. Maybe we're not as high on him as some of the national media, but Rock Ya-Sin from Temple, a one-year guy, Presbyterian transfer. What are your thoughts on him? Is he worth the first-round hype?
Oh, my God. They ought to change this kid's name to Rock You Like a Hurricane. I mean, this guy, he just hits you, man. You look at the guy out there, what he does on the field. No problem sifting through trash, making plays in the tight quarters. The quick feet, the sure hands. Very disruptive, taking the receiver off his routes progression. I mean, my God, you look at what they did last year. They only completed 11% of the passes against this guy. Why? He's a quick reactionary type of player. I think he might slip into round 2, but you got to watch Bill with number 32 because he's a wild card there. Would I be happy if you guys ended up taking him at 20? Hell yes, because I think this guy is a great cornerback. Short, quick, pit-a-pat step type of steps coming out of his back pedal. Shows more than enough acceleration and burst to redirect with no wasted motions. Now, if you start bringing up Greedy Williams, I hope his mom's not on the phone.
Yeah, Rocky saying we're in the single digits for one of the toughest players for Temple. Dave, you came to us a couple years ago talking about this relative unknown corner from Utah in Brian Allen, and lo and behold, he becomes a Pittsburgh Steeler, and it hasn't necessarily panned out, but certainly the allure was there. Are there any similar day 3 candidates you like, some maybe raw corner that has some size, athleticism that you think is worth taking a flyer on somewhere, day 3?
Oh, yeah, look at the kid out of South Dakota State that really did well down at the Combines, and that's Jordan Brown. Now, Jordan is more of a coverage type of guy. You then look at the kid from Washburn that excelled down there, Corey Ballantyne. Corey Ballantyne will stick it with you. You look at the way both of these guys play. Baker to me, Brown to me, he's a type of guy. He's got natural hands for the interception, good elevation going for the ball. He jumps just at the right time, ability to track the ball in flight. You look at what Ballantyne brings out there on the football field, the ball reaction skills of this kid. Very quick plant and drive step, closing on the receiver, explosive behind his hits, good strides, improving his timing, shows very good hand-eye coordination on the deep routes. He's got to develop a better feel for the plays in front of him, but this is the type of guy that will definitely high point for the ball.
Before we switch positions here, I want to get your thoughts on 2 other cornerbacks that we've kind of been able to just for one reason or the other, be able to link to the Steelers. One of them is Justin Lane out of Michigan State, a former wide receiver converted to a cornerback. And the other one, more of a later round guy out of Miami, and that's Michael Jackson Sr. Can you share some knowledge on those two guys and your thoughts on whether or not they're a fit?
Well, Lane would be in another uniform, guys, because he's not going to be around at number 52. If you're looking at him as as a second-round guy, he's probably going to go early on day 2 itself. A secure wrap-up tackler. He's the type of guy that you like with his impressive awareness, looking up receivers and anticipating the quarterback to jump on a play. Yeah, sometimes he'll get over-aggressive. It causes him to lose relationship on his coverage assignment, but he stays disciplined versus the combo routes. And this is where he's very effective.
And
who was the other guy?
Michael Jackson out of Miami.
I like that kid. You look at what he does with his pads on. He has the speed, the closing burst, and the ball reaction skills to stay tight with any opponent, whether they are quick or fast or tall or physical. Needs to improve his strength base, though, so he won't get backed off by the bigger receivers at the next level. He could become a solid press man. I mean, look at the way he uses his hands very well to jam and run with his opponent down the field. He mirrors the underneath receivers, so this is the type of guy that I look at, especially when I got Hayden and I got Nelson. More than likely, the cornerback I'm going to bring in is going to have to play a lot in the slot. That's what this kid does, going up against those underneath receivers.
About Justin Lane, is 22 early for him for the Steelers brought him in for a visit. He's an underclassman. He put up, nice numbers at the combine and all. I mean, his tape looks like it passes the mustard test. If Byron Murphy's off the board, and let's say both those inside linebackers off the board, is 22 early for Justin Lane, Dave?
Here's what I always say. It's better to draft around too early than sit there and regret it around too late. Now, here's the thing, though, guys. If Moif's not there, I got to go one other route. I got to go get myself a right offensive tackle. I mean, after you traded away Gilbert, you got yourself right now an open door policy at that right tackle position. If I'm sitting out there with number 20 and I come up on the board and I'm seeing a guy on the board like Andre Dillard, boom, I'm up on that podium with that card in a nanosecond.
Well, they tend to let or plan to let Matt Filer and Chukwuma Okorafor battle that out. So we'll see. We will all be surprised if they take a tackle probably at all in this draft. But you've been right on some of these things before. Let's switch over.
Well, here's the thing, guys. I'll be very honest with you. If they're going to go that route, I right now I'm looking at Ben Roethlisberger and I'm contacting Affleck if those two guys are going to be the ones to compete at the right tackle position.
Fair enough. Let's go to a position that of need ever since that haven't done a great job of addressing. They of course did sign Mark Barron, an older free agent here during the offseason to help in that area at inside linebacker there. But a lot of eyes of course on the two Devons at the top of the draft board, Devin White and Devin Bush out of Michigan. A lot of people expect Devin White to be gone within the first 10 picks. Another group of people expect the other Devin to be gone before the Steelers pick at 20. I kind of like Devin Bush's chances of falling to 20. So, give us your thoughts on the two Devins and how far is the gap between those two guys and then whoever the next off the ball inside linebacker is on your board.
Well, after you get past the two Devons, as far as looking for a middle linebacker goes, I got to wait till round 2 because after these two, it's going to be sort of like that song from Heavy Metal, How Low Can You Go? I mean, everybody's talking about Mac Wilson from
I can't believe Dave just quoted a song from the movie, from the Heavy Metal. Dave, you have a place, you go after my heart every time we have you on.
Did I remind you I started this in 1967? I mean, I got underwear with hair on it.
Boy, for you to bring up a Heavy Metal movie reference, one of my all-time favorite movies, just absolutely fantastic. Continue on. I apologize for interrupting you.
Well, the thing I'm looking at right now is no way in hell, as Vince McMahon would say, as far as going out there and getting the Devin White. White's going to be off the board. Here's what's going to happen. He's going with the number 5 pick. Simply, he's going to Tampa Bay, or you're going to see John Elway try to trade up with Tampa Bay to get him, and that's why I think he's going to end up with the Buccaneers. As far as Bush goes, there's no way he's going to get past Cincinnati with the problems that they have at their linebacking unit. So that's why I got to look at another position to address, because, guys, when I come up in round 3, have I got an inside linebacker for you? No, he's not a Ryan Shazier, but he's probably the closest thing you could find to him, Jermaine Pratt. This is a guy, 3 years was a safety. They moved him to linebacker this year. Over 100 tackles. This kid just simply flies out on the football field. Hey, no knock on Barron, but there's a reason the Rams got rid of him and got rid of Ogletree. If I blew in Barron's left ear, I better make sure I got an earplug in his right. I can't take my middle linebackers that go out there and say, which way should I go, Joe? Which way should I go? And you got to look at the other middle linebacker that they have there in Williams. Williams is Crash Gordon. Williams needs somebody to direct him. You don't have that traffic cop anymore since your Zier is out of the lineup.
All right, so go ahead, Alex.
To talk about another inside linebacker with Mack Wilson, I know that every player's situation is going to be different, declaring or not, but does it feel like the wrong decision to leave early? Does he seem like that squarely second-round pick?
He'll be a second-round pick this year. He would have been a second-round pick next year. Okay. What he is, he's a blue-collar type of ball player out there on the football field. I like what he brings out there. He's athletic. He's got the compact physique with a thick upper body, muscular arms. He displays fluid hip snap with minimal body fat. This is the type of guy that I look out there. He's an instinctive middle linebacker, quick to read and react. The thing is, though, if I'm going with Williams inside, I need somebody with speed. Give me a guy with 4.5 speed. Why? Because I need somebody to impact on the line. If I got my middle linebacker coming in over my nose guard and causing problems in the backfield, next thing I know, my 2 outside linebackers are going to be doing some damage. And speaking of the outside linebackers, I'm pretty much sure that a reject up with the New York Jets will end up with a team in the Pennsylvania State, whether it's the Eagles or the Steelers. But the Ron Lee right now, whoever picks him up for a day 3 pick, they could have the second coming of Shazier. The Jets misused this kid. And look at his pedigree. Buckeye, and look who mentored him, Ryan Shazier.
Yeah, we've been asked about Darren Lee a ton this offseason. To stick with the off-ball linebackers for one more question, I know you mentioned Jermaine Pratt as kind of your guy on day 2, but who else do you like, or at least in terms of the players the Steelers have brought in? Texas is Gary Johnson, West Virginia's David Long Jr. Any thoughts on those two names?
Okay, I'm going to have to go slow with this because understand I'm from Brooklyn, so me pronouncing names is a little bit of a problem. But down at Texas San Antonio Roadrunners, they got a guy down there, Josiah Tauaefa, Tauaefa. So if I mispronounce the name, hopefully his mom's not going to beat me up when I walk out of my complex over here. This is a kid that's got a great combination of size and power to punish the runner with crunch and hits. You would think that the way he attacks the ball carriers that he would have a lot of nicks and bruises on him, but outside of a knee injury in 2017, he's pretty durable during his career. Steady play maker, eyes and instincts to recognize the action developing in front of him, gets into position to make the play. I like the size of this kid. He's pushing 250 pounds, good physical style. His best asset out there on the football field is run stuffing.
How about David Long Jr. out of West Virginia? Where is he going to go? What are your thoughts on him?
Oh, you mean the prima donna? Well, I'm not working out at the combines. Come on out and see me on pro day. Well, I'm not really in the move right now. This kid cost himself quite a bit of money with that type of attitude. You don't
think that ankle injury had anything to do with that, or you think he overplayed that?
He overplayed that. Okay. I mean, let's put it to you this way. If you're all of a sudden complaining about that and the next night you're out dancing, don't tell me that you're out there doing rehab.
Okay, fair enough. Any other inside linebackers? Cashman out of Minnesota.
Oh my God, Cash! Let me tell you about Cash. Cash is Crash Gordon himself. This kid came to that school as a walk-on. ended up being a defensive end as a freshman, ends up moving a linebacker last year, and look at the numbers he put up. A total pure athlete over there. He's the type of guy that with patient coaching, you find him in round 4, round 5. By the second year, you got yourself a quality starter. Me, honestly, I like to play him on the outside. With that speed, his burst, the way that he comes up and supports against the run, yeah, I see this guy that I can play him on the inside, but if you put him on the outside, you got Bam Bam Gordon.
All right, edge rusher is another area where the Steelers could use some help. You know, they got Bud Dupree. They picked up that fifth-year option, but in all likelihood, this might be his swan song in 2019 here. They're going to need another future guy to pair with T.J. Watt there. Cleveland Farrell out of Clemson could possibly fit the bill. I think you have some news and notes maybe about Brian Burns and some thoughts out on him on FSU and maybe a position switch for him there. Talk about Farrell and then talk about Burns and any other edge rushers, you know, that fit the Steelers at outside linebacker there.
Well, the thing I like about Burns is he's a wild card for me because I could play him at outside linebacker. He's smart enough that I could even move him to the inside position, or I could keep him up on the edge. The thing that bothers me, though, he played at 230 and change. He shows up at the combines with 15 more pounds on him. He still ran a 4.56, but I want to see how he would move with pads on, carrying that extra 15 pounds. You know, you get some kids, they run 4.3 in their underwear. They put the pads on, they're running 4.7. Then I'll end up with a guy that runs 4.7. He puts his pads on, he runs 4.7 too. I want to see how he carries his equipment. This is a kid, sudden initial quickness needed to gain advantage on a slower offensive lineman. Shows great flexibility and balance, guys, especially when he's working down the line. He does a nice job of flattening and changing direction to provide that inside gap containment, and that's why I like to see him as a linebacker. Sure, he takes good angles coming off the edge as a pass rusher, carries his weight well, shows good balance and body control working down the line, and he's got that second gear to generate long pursuit. So if I'm playing him on the outside, I'd much rather have him standing up. He keeps his pads down, his head is on a swivel, compensates for a lack of bulk with very active hands, and that's why he's able to deliver counter moves and slip off of blocks.
Cleveland Farrell?
Yeah, I like Cleveland because Cleveland is, how can I put it, my safe bet out there. I mean, he has the ability to sit out there in a short area, moves like a linebacker on the field, the strength to shock and shed quickly to get into the backfield. He has the reach and hand strength that he could combat anyone on man, but still, when I look at that Cleveland, Clemson line, I tell you one guy that I would really love because I miss Casey Hampton. Got to go for Dexter. If you're going to go for a defensive lineman, I know you're saying you need something on the edge, but still, a plugger in the middle like a Dexter Lawrence may be hard to pass up, even though I don't need a nose guard at this point. Hey, I tell the Clemson Tiger, the other 3 defensive linemen, once they sign their NFL contract, they owe Dexter a commission.
Before I turn it back over to Alex, your thoughts on where you come in on Chase Winovich out of Michigan?
Love the kid. I think he's going to go a little bit of a drop on the draft because still people are checking out that hand, you know, the surgery that he had on the hand. I look at the way that he fed off of Rashawn Gary because Gary played a lot of the run gap, and that allowed Winovich to be split up. Honestly, I look at him, doesn't he remind you of what? I mean, everything I see with him, his size, his speed, his intelligence out on the field, that'd be a nice bookend on the other side.
Boy, he's got some nice hand usage too, boy. He really does.
I mean, if he's there at 52, I got to take a gamble and go for this guy.
To go to the defensive line, Dave T, Ed Oliver, from an on-field perspective, seems to be one of the most maybe divisive, controversial prospects of where you're going to fit him. Could he play linebacker? Where do you see Ed Oliver? What's his best fit? Playing interior, standing up? How do you see him fit in the NFL?
Oh, he'll be standing up, and he'll be standing up in silver and black, guys. It's done. He's number 4. I mean, I think it would even come down to the point where if Arizona turned around to Chucky right now and says, hey, do you want Murray? I think Mike Mayock might lock Chucky in a closet and say, listen, we're going for the kid from Houston. This is a type of guy, he's like this. He's the Swiss Army blade. I'm not comparing him to Aaron Donald, and anybody that does that, I'm going to smack him on the rump, because Aaron Donald, to me, is my measuring stick. And I think you guys remember from years ago, I talked about that little guy coming out of the Pittsburgh Panther program. This is a type of guy that if I put him as a middle linebacker in a 3-4 defense, I got the second coming of Teddy Bruschi. If I play him up on the line, I much rather play him as a 5. Sure, he could play the 1. Yeah, he could play the 3. But why waste that burst? And look at those hands of his, man. He's very violent moving those arms around.
So even in a hypothetical scenario where there's Nick Bosa and Ed Oliver on the board for the Raiders, you think it's still going to be Oliver?
I'm not taking Bosa at all. Let me tell you why. I'm more concerned about Bosa's durability. I think that once he comes in the league, he's not going to be Joey Bosa 2.0. He's going to be John Bosa 2.0, his father, who was a flop down in Miami.
Wow. I know I'm throwing a lot of names at you, Dave T, but the Miami guys, the U guys, are really interesting along that defensive line. I feel a little less strongly about it now, but I kind of feel like maybe Pittsburgh's targeting someone like Gerald Willis or Joe Jackson. Do you have any insight on those two guys?
I like Willis a little bit more because I look at Willis and I look at the Solomon Thomas that came into the league with San Fran. San Fran's misusing Solomon Thomas. He's the type of guy I want to play at under tackle. The same thing true with Willis. The problem is with the scheme that you guys are using over there, you don't use the under tackle that much because you got yourself a quality nose and you got yourself a good 5-tech over there in truth. So what I'm looking at, if I'm going to bring this guy in, he's got to fit into my scheme. I don't think either one of those two right now fit in what you need as far as a 5-tech guy out there on the football field.
Speaking of like 5, 4, and 3 techs, guys that can move up and down the defensive line, you know, the Steelers could probably use another backup behind Tuitt and Hayward this year. It looks like they've shown some interest in Charles Omenihu out of Texas and possibly even Tillery out of Notre Dame. What are your thoughts on those two kind of 5, 4 techs there, Dave?
You know, I'm still a little bit confused on Tillery. I mean, this is a guy that a lot of people are sitting out there saying, oh, he's a fringe one. Well, to me, he's a fringe football player. I mean, you look at what he does on the football field, and it's really not much. I mean, he sits back, waits for the action to come to him, and I don't like that from my defensive linemen. I want them to start initiating contact. He just doesn't do that.
And Omenihu out of Texas?
Oh, that kid is the type of guy that I bring in I got to be a little bit patient with. He still plays on sheer athletic skill itself. That worries me a little bit. Now, in round 2, if I come up on the board and if there's no Winovich there, I got to look at one thing, too. Jalen Ferguson has a couple issues off the field, which was back in 2016. He's probably still likely going to be on the board in round 2. But still, if I wait till day 3 itself, there's some nice talent out there. Look at Max Crosby from Eastern Michigan. I bring this guy in. I got myself a very hungry ball player. Look at Porter Houston from USC. Okay, the injuries are a little bit of an issue over there. Or Ben Banogu from TCU. This is going to be, how could I put it, an edge rusher thick draft. What you're going to see is a trend. A lot of edge rushers are going to go early in round 1. Later on in round 1, people are going to jump up on the defensive backs and grab. Round 2 comes up, you're going to see the wide receivers go off the board. Round 3, that's where you're going to find your pass protecting offensive tackles.
I really liked Banogu in his tape and all. He's a little bit older, but if the Steelers could get him in round 4 or 5, around there, I wouldn't be disappointed. Now, one other guy I was higher on prior to the pre-draft process getting underway, who really stubbed his toe the whole way here, is Ja'Kai Polite. Where do you come in on Ja'Kai Polite out of Florida, and what round does it make sense for any team to try to take a chance to see if they can get a find there?
I think, how could I put it, this is a 22-year-old with a 16-year-old brain. I mean, the tape shows his ability to rush the pocket. He's got fluid, diverse attack going into the backfield. Type of guy that I might even use as a 3-4 outside linebacker on the early downs. The combine thing, bad workouts, the weight gain, these are things that are telling me this might not be a ball player that's dedicated to his craft. Remember the issues that Dallas and the Giants have with DeMontre Moore, and now he's back in with San Francisco? Why do I put the same onus tag on this guy?
You think third or fourth round is about right for him for a team?
Yeah, but I mean, we're talking first-round talent that might even be out there rounds 4 to 7. I could see him even sliding into 5. I think people right now just don't want to bring in the locker room type of issues, and I think his lack of maturity factor alone is going to scare off quite a few teams.
All right, Alex, you want to hit him up on some safeties?
You read my mind, and that's exactly where I was going to go. And I wanted to start with Juan Thornhill because I kind of get maybe a Terrell Edmonds feel from him in the sense of a guy that has a chance to go late first round and make surprising people. But 13 interceptions, a ball hawk at Virginia, had a great combine workout. Do you see Thornhill as a possible late first round selection?
Yeah, because I could bring him in and play him at slot corner to start out with. More than likely, he's going to go in round 2. But the kid's not only got incredible speed, he's a very good cover type. And remember, he played the press corner for them earlier before they shifted him around to safety his sophomore year. I mean, 44-inch vertical leap. The only thing missing on this guy is a red cape. Yeah, I mean, look at the way that he eyes the receiver getting into the routes, the way that he recognizes everything, especially on the combos. He won't get fooled by play action. He's a quick trigger type out there. I like the way that I could line him up in the slot because he's physical enough to take on those tight ends and the slot receivers coming out of the backfield. Type of guy over here that if I'm going to play him, I much rather play him at the free than the strong position because this is a guy with great range.
There are so many dime guys this year in the safety class, and with the way the league's going to 6 defensive back packages, the Steelers ran dime, as their majority package last year. I look at Taylor Rapp, I look at Jonathan Abraham from Mississippi State. With Rapp, how do you view him? I know he ran slow at his pro day in the 4.7s, but he plays fast. He's a monster hitter. Is that 40-time worry you, or do you trust the tape on Taylor Rapp?
I go back to the 4.7, 4.72, right? Underwear, equipment. This is a kid that carries his equipment well. I don't think the Cougars were going to sit him on the bench last year just because he ran a 4.7. I know everybody's talking about Abram. Everybody's talking about Rapp. Adderley comes in the conversation. Me, if I have my druthers, I know I'm not going to get those guys in round 1 because I have other issues. I come up later in the draft, the second, third round, I'm looking at Darnell Savage from Maryland. I'm looking at the guy who I think is the best chess master of any safety in this draft, Amani Hooker out of Iowa.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir. A lot of Darnell Savage fans, and the Steelers even brought him in for a pre-draft visit. I've had kind of a man crush since turning on his tape on Chauncey Gardner-Johnson out of Florida. We were a bit surprised that the Steelers did not really send the big guns to that pro day there. Am I too high on Chauncey Gardner-Johnson? Am I too low? Where is his fit, and where should he go in this year's draft?
Chauncey is the type of guy that he's a bull in a china shop, but oh my God, man, that guy really needs to learn how to read coverage. He's the type of guy that I want to play in the box because he's a great blitzer, supports the run really well, handles his own assignments in front of him. But if I got to put this guy man-on-mano with a wide receiver, no way, man. I mean, then I'm a quarterback sitting back there going, yum, yum, eat him up. Hey, guys, I'm telling you, man, come up in day 3 if he ends up in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform. They've been doing a lot of homework on that kid out of my school, man, Evan Worthington out of Colorado. He is a kid that came into the program as a linebacker. He's got good size on him. When they were up there for pro day, he was up to 219, dropped his 40 time down a lot. He's the type of kid you sit out there and watch what he could bring over to the football field. Look at John Johnson. I mean, he's right in that same mold. I'm looking for safeties right now if I'm an NFL team that are interchangeable. There's no longer that strong, that free man, because I need both of my safeties to act as cornerbacks, as quarterbacks out there for my defense. He's got great man coverage ability working from the slot. I could also move him back and have him as a deep safety because he's got good recovery speed.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there with having that athleticism at the safety and being able to have them wear multiple hats here. You mentioned Darnell Savage. Where is he at all in play as a first round draft pick for a team this year?
Hey, I told everybody last year about Terrell, and everybody's saying, Dave, man, he's a 2, he's a 3. I says, all right, watch. Somebody's going to get smart and get this guy. Why? Because this was a kid that bounced around from position to position at Virginia Tech, and when he got hurt over there, that's when Virginia Tech went in the El Fondo at the end of the season. I look at this kid as the same way. I watch what he could bring out there on the football field. Look at the money that Oakland just spent on the Marcus Joyner. Savage is in the same mold, you know. You look at a guy, well, he's 5'11", he's he's $190 and change, yeah. But I'm telling you, don't go on that bench press. Some kids are field strong based on what they could do in the weight room. This is a guy that could probably end up being one of the best 2 high zone type or slot cover defensive backs in this draft.
Before Alex switches you over to the offensive side of football here, Ugo, where do you come in on Ugo out of Oregon?
I look at him and what he could do, but, there's so much talent out there in this draft. He's got to be a day 3 guy.
Yeah, I agree with you there, but he has takeaway skills, and, he shows up on tape, and plus I think he can return
I want takeaway
too.
skills. I go out there and I get Cedric Redwine from Miami. I mean, this is a guy I could play in any position in the secondary.
No, I agree.
All right, Alex.
I like Hugo, but he tackles like he's 5'9", and that's the problem I have with Hugo Amadi. But, yeah, I want to flip over to the offensive side of the football, and I want to start with tight end. I know this is a big-picture question, Dave T., but is this tight end class as good and as deep of a tight end class as you've seen in a long time? Because it feels like there's 10 names you can throw out there as potential, day 1 and day 2 picks.
If they end up taking Dawson Knox in round 3 over here, they will have a perfect complement for Vance McDonald. I'm telling people right now, everybody's saying Noah Fant, well, look at that athleticism. Noah Fant won't block. He'll run over you, but he won't block. To me, it's Hawk, or I go into Hawk to try to move up to get him. Watch what's going to happen. Detroit is going to be in play. If the Atlanta Falcons, who covered Ed Oliver, see him still on board at 8, they're going to do the trade. But I see Detroit more than likely going back to his former team, Mr. Quinn, and doing a massive deal with New England. Look at New England where they're sitting right now. They got a massive hole with Gronk out. Hawkinson is the only tight end in this draft that I would even think about taking in round 1. Why? Because I see the second coming of Mark Bavaro. It will cost New England, number 32, will cost them one of their 2s and probably one of their number 3s to move up to number 8 and get it. But I know that when Bill Belichick puts his mind to something, he's going to go after that guy. Hawkinson will be catching passes with Tom Brady next year. I'm so positive on that, you could call me Mr. Proton.
I'm going to hold you to that. But another name that feels like he's destined to become a Steelers, Foster Moreau from LSU, well-respected, wore that number 18 jersey that was so, prized with the Tigers. Could he be a late, round 3 kind of guy with the way he tested at the Combine?
Possibly, but I much rather head out west, maybe because I am on the West Coast. But look at the kid, what do you call it, the water polo player that showed up at San Diego State, Khalil Waring. Go down to San Jose State and look at Josh Oliver. Both of these guys fit the mold, and they'll still be there round 3, round 4. You want a super blocker, you could come up in day 3, probably around 6 or 7, and find the kid down at Georgia, and Isaac Nawada. Hey, Caden Smith is if you want yourself a good wide receiver that doesn't have great speed that you could find on day 3. I think outside of Hawk, though, the most complete tight end in this draft is Irv Smith. You look at what he does, the way that I could line him out wide, the way that he could stretch the field, and he's a quality blocker too. My pecking order on this thing is Hawkinson, Smith, Knox, and then reluctantly with Font, or basically just because of his receiving skills. Font to me is a Jimmy Graham type, but I want more on my tight end than just a guy that's a glorified wide receiver.
I've been in that same boat with Font for a while. I think it's Hawkinson, and then I've been trying to figure out how far the gap is between Smith.
Could I tell you a story on this kid?
Go ahead.
I'm on the Mackey Award Committee. Well, I guess with the name Dave T.E., they figured it was great for me to be on there. But I've been on them forever, and Dallas Clark has been on for the last 10 years. Dallas usually sits around listening to what everybody had to say. When it came up to Noah Fant, it was like, no, lover boy, let me tell you about Hawkinson. Dallas Clark is probably Perry Mason when it came to describing those two wide receivers. He talked about how Funk goes into his funks where the coaches have to stroke him a lot. And you look at him out on the football field. Look at what happened in his last 3 games. 2 games he only caught 1 pass. Then he turns around and says, you know what? I'm going to do Roberto Duran. No mas. I'm not showing up at the bowl game. Dallas Clark made everyone in the NFL go back and double-check the second-half film on Hawkinson, and now everybody is walking home saying what Clark said, the second coming of Mark Bavaro.
Let me just be clear. You would be shocked if Font goes in the first round?
No, he'll go in the first round. A fool and his money is soon parted. But, this is the type of team that if I take Font in, I better have myself a quality blocker over there, because if I'm asking him to block for my quarterback, I better have 5 quarterbacks on my roster.
Fair enough. Wide receiver. Now that AB's gone, the Steelers seem to be looking for another ex-wide receiver. Let me tell you 2 names that it seems like are kind of destined by reading the tea leaves for the Steelers to draft one of the 2 of them. David Seals out of West Virginia, or the kid Miles Boykin out of Notre Dame. Where do you come in on both those kids, and talk a little bit more about some others that would probably be best suited to be kind of the X receiver in the Steelers offense?
Well, the way I'm looking at it is, if I could take Sills' brain and intelligence on the football field and put it in Boykin, I'd have myself a great wide receiver. Unfortunately,
that's fair. That's fair.
I mean, look at Boykin. I mean, a great athlete, but he has no route conception whatsoever. Then you look at Sills. Sills just has that Steve Largent type. I'll find the soft spot in the zone. I'm not a great runner and anything, but you're looking at a former quarterback, so he brings that knowledge there. To me, Sills reminds me of Julian Edelman without the speed, the same conversion from quarterback to the wide receiver spot itself. These are 2 guys here, day 3, but I'm telling you, if anybody looked at the pro day, if anybody looked at the NFL combine and saw who the scout said was the best route runner there, coming up in round 5, I got to go for that 5-star guy over at Ohio State, and his name is not Campbell or McLaurin. It's Johnny Dixon. Now, Campbell's my number 1 wide receiver. I don't care what anybody on the freaking planet says. I'm looking at the slot receiving position as being, how could I put it, going through a trend. I'm no longer getting those short guys there. I'm getting the big guys. Let me run these numbers by you on Campbell. 82% of the passes thrown to him in the last 2 years he caught. Last year, 1,008 yards receiving, 888 yards after the catch. I mean, you talk about yakety yak. That's Campbell.
And where do you come in on which one is more overrated? DK Metcalf.
DK Metcalf is Brashad.
You're supposed to wait until I give you another choice.
No. Let me tell you, I either got ESP or I'm sitting here and just looking at this guy and saying, no, I'm not going for this guy. Brashad Perryman Jr. Look at the way that he runs out there on the football field. Everything is a straight burst. Go back and look at him this year. 3 SEC games he played in, he had a grand total of 4 receptions. I'm not going to get happy when he has 106 yards against the Kent State or shows up against Louisiana Monroe and grabs 9 balls. Show me what you could do up against the big boys. Against the big boys, I could find Waldo before I could find Metcalf. Now, if you wanted to find the good receiver down there, give me that tough son of a gun, A.J. Brown. I'll take him. As far as the receiver that is likely to be number 1 in the draft, let me tell you one thing. If this kid ends up in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform, I'm moving the stadium out of town. There is no way in hell that Hollywood Brown belongs in a locker room of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
You're right. You're right.
Here's the thing. Here's a guy that calls himself Hollywood. Here's a guy that's related to AB. Why the hell do I want to bring in HB? Because then all of a sudden I'm going to end up with the same culture in the locker room in a couple of years. I mean, right now, the biggest thing that I got to do is sit down and tell Ben, you better start taking some nice pills because there's been a lot of crap out there on you. Between Ben and Aaron right now, they're probably deflecting more from off the field than what they do on the field. But still, I look at the Pittsburgh Steelers right now, I'm waiting around too. Why? Because I got N'Keal Harry out there. I got Akeem Butler. Oh, my God, do you see the size of Akeem Butler? I mean, Jesus, man, I might as well move this guy into the NBA. He still needs to learn how to run routes, but look at the way that Detroit developed Kenny Golladay. That's what you're going to get out of Butler. As far as Harry goes, Harry is the best route runner in his draft. I don't care what anybody says about any other receivers out there. This kid is a big-time baller for you. Come up in round 2, you're sitting there. Both of those receivers might still be on the board.
You think there's a chance both Butler and Harry are still on the board come
I think Harry might be gone. I think that you got to watch the Giants with number 37 because they want to bring in a big wide receiver. If you look at right now, you got Eli Manning, who's probably the Bambi of quarterbacks out there staring in the headlights of a truck. But if you look at the receivers that they brought in, Eli might as well wear a Snow White costume because he's got a bunch of little dwarfs. They need to bring in a big wide receiver, and if you're going to go that route, logic says Harry. Hell, it wouldn't even bother me if Harry ends up going in round 1.
Before I turn it back over to Alex again, 2 other guys that the Steelers seemingly could have interest in that seem like they fit what they do is Stanley Morgan Jr. out of Nebraska, and a guy that they just they just are bringing in today for a pre-draft visit. I think it's Deontay Thompson.
The safety, you mean?
I think it's Deontay Johnson from Toledo.
Oh, Deontay Johnson. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I said
I was
Thompson.
saying if they were bringing in a safety.
No, Deontay Johnson. I had my name wrong there.
I'm real curious to see what they're going to be doing with their homework. They've also done quite a bit of a homework on the kid out of Auburn, Slayton. Now, Slayton is my favorite sleeper in the draft at the wide receiver position because he was with a program where those coaches were so dysfunctional when it came to putting together their game plan. Here's a kid that should be at least a top 40 pick that probably will still be on the board in round 3 or round 4.
I'm a big fan of Deebo Samuel from South Carolina. Are you?
I like Deebo too, and I think that somebody is going to get this guy. They're going to have themselves a great flanker. I see him in round 2. I just don't think he'll be there by number 52. Do you?
I don't.
If he wouldn't have suffered that injury, would he have been a year ago? Would he have been the top wide receiver in this class? Talking about Deebo, Dave.
He would have been the top receiver in any of the drafts over here. He's a highly efficient route runner. I like what he does with his hands to defeat the press. Same thing with Paris Campbell. You look at these guys, I like physicality from my receivers because what's the problem with the little guys? And that's the problem that I got with Hollywood. Hollywood, to me, reminds me of Corey Coleman. How the hell is he going to get out there and beat the press? They says, well, he's got good speed. Yeah, but if you don't got that quick get-off, and that's the problem I see with AB. AB is a great squirt once he gets downfield. But to get past the pressing, if you look in the NFL, NFL's a whole lot more physical than you see in college. In the college, it's a lot of off coverage.
Is Andy Isabella destined to become a Patriot or no?
You know, I'm still going back over here and saying fake news with his 40-yard dash. I mean, how do you run a 4.56, a 4.45, and then they put up a 4.31? If you look at that scene from everything, they were showing Paris Campbell running a 4.31. So all of a sudden, the little white boy ends up a 4.31. There's no white boy on the planet that runs 4.31. If he does, he's running away from his wife because he got caught cheating.
Go ahead.
Isabella is a good receiver. Don't get me wrong, but there's a whole lot better slot receivers out there. I just think it's the mystique that's carrying over on him. But if you go back and look at film, look at the competition he went up against. I mean, geez, Dave, me and you could catch passes against those guys in the AAC.
You give me way too much credit. Hit him up on some running backs, Alex.
Yeah, I was going to move to running back, a position the Steelers have shown maybe a bit surprising.
Good, because I got a sleeper for you guys. So go ahead, I'll let you do your talking, and then I'll jump in with a guy that's going to blow your freaking mind.
That will blow my mind. Who's your sleeper?
Here's my thing. You got Samuels, fullback type, good physical type. You got Connor, a good in between the tackle type. You need to go out there and get yourself a change of pace type. Now, here's a kid up at Maryland. If he didn't end up with a thigh injury this year, really would have kicked butt. Did not go to the combine. Everyone shows up on Pro Day. He runs a 4.24 or 4.31. Here's a kid that has averaged 39.41 yards per touchdown run during his career, 44.6 yards per touchdown total for his career, is a kick returner, stands 6 foot tall, 217 pounds. His name is Ty Johnson out of Maryland.
Wow, and you see him as day 3?
I'm hearing from teams right now that he's definitely moved up in the draft, more than likely a late day 3 type. But this is a guy that you get in camp. Hey, listen, I told you guys about Lindsey last year out of my school in Colorado. Right. A couple of years ago, I was raving about Kamara. This kid is a cross between the two of them.
When you talk to teams or teams talk to you, how do they value the running back position? It feels like it's come up a little bit lately with Barkley and, Gurley's deal and Le'Veon Bell, the 49ers loading up on running backs. But how do they view the running back position? Are they looking for that one guy, or are they looking for niche complement pieces to have a committee?
Do you know, you go out there and look at right now, there's only like 6 franchise running backs. Everybody else is going by committee. Right. You also look at, let's go back and look at the free agent market. There were 44 running backs out there on the market. 19 ended up with deals. Only 6 of them ended up with a deal with 2 years or more. Wow. So you're looking at that. Everyone is disregarding the running back for the simple situation. This is the pass-happy situation in the NFL right now. But I say no matter how many wide receivers you have, what are you going to do when you get inside the red zone? You better run that ball, because it's the only way that you're going to be able to score right inside the red zone. A lot of teams are going to the 1-2 punch. I'm not a party of that, but then you go back to the sad effect. Look at the 35 running backs that were brought into the combine. One of them was a fullback.
What about Alex likes to do these studies every year, what the Steelers look for when it comes to drafting running backs. A lot of it has to do in measurables, but we have a long enough kind of track record with Kevin Colbert as GM that we get a nice little selection going there. So tell us the best running backs, in your opinion, in this draft that weigh, let's say 220 pounds or more.
I look at not only the size of the running backs, I look at the mileage of the running backs, and I'm telling everybody right now, the best deals out there is a backup at Alabama and a kid that finally said goodbye, Saquon, hello, Miles, and that was Miles Sanders down at Penn State. Miles Sanders is probably the best kept secret as far as the media goes, but if I walk into any war room and I look at those running backs up on the board, he is just sitting there among the top quartet. Another kid that I love is David Montgomery. Jacobs I like a lot because this is a kid with low mileage on him, and it's sort of the opposite with Harris. Harris, to me, is the more polished of the two. But if you go back and look at Alabama running backs in, the recent years over here, those 300, 350 carries down with the Crimson Tide, it takes its toll by the time they reach the NFL. You're not seeing that with Jacobs. Jacobs doesn't have that massive amount of carries like Harris has.
All right, rattle off what you know about Alex Barnes out of KSU and L.J. Scott out of Michigan State.
LJ ended up with the injury factor, and that's what caused the problem for him as far as draftability goes. But you're going to come up in day 3. You're going to see him. You're going to see Barnes out there. Barnes, you talk about a powerhouse. This was what David Cobb should have been a couple of years ago. Outstanding combine, the ability to handle the third down duties, great back coming out of the backfield itself. He's got good vision finding the rush lanes, and he's also patient. He's got that little pit pitter-patter step, and that gives him the good change of direction. A kid that probably will still be out there in round 3. You look at the size on the guy. I mean, 6 feet tall, 228 pounds. Yeah, this is the type of guy that's going to get a lot of attention on day 3 itself. You look at some of the other running backs out there that I think are going to fall by the wayside. They talk about Devin Singletary. Oh, the kid is a blip. Well, the last thing I noticed, either my stopwatch broke or he's still running his 40 out there. Honestly, I go back, there's this kid down there, I think his name is Kiefer White, who's also an outstanding kickoff returner. When I watch film of Florida Atlantic, White stands out to me more than Singletary does. So I'm coming up in round 6, round 7. This is a guy that I'm going to hit on. If I want a violent runner, though, oh, my God, look at that Temple Owl kid, Raquel Armstead. I mean, he runs out there on the football field. He wants to hit everything, even his coach.
You know, they brought in the white kid just recently for a pre-draft visit as well too. So that matches up for sure. And I knew.
Well,
nothing.
Look at some of the other change of backs out there. I mean, do you see that kid in the Aggie uniform, Travion Williams? I mean, he could be the second coming of Kamara.
Yeah, well,
and Justice Hill. I mean, Justice Hill, I mean, if I want to play home run ball and his name is not Ty Johnson, I mean, Justice Hill is a type, you end up with 2 type of running backs. You either end up with one who's going to move the chains or you're going to end up with one that's going to get you a home run. If you want a home run, you take Justice Hill. If you want him to move the chains, you go find somebody else who's not Justin Hill.
Yeah, you don't have to sell me on Justice Hill. I watched a lot of tape last year on Oklahoma State when reviewing the picks of Mason Rudolph and James Washington. That guy really sticks out. Despite his size, he can still do it all, run between the tackles and all like that. All right, Alex. Interior offensive lineman. Maybe there's an outside chance the Steelers get maybe a guard/center in this draft. I like the chances of that a little bit better than I do them going tackles. So tell us about, and if they do go that way with the interior offensive lineman, we would kind of expect it to be round 4 or later, probably, Dave T. So what are some interior linemen that kind of fit what the Steelers look for? Maybe one that can even play some guard and some center in the later rounds.
Oh, well, if you're looking for a guy to play guard and center, you won't even have to draft him. You might as well take who I say is the second best guard in this draft at the just simply defies logic that he wasn't in Indianapolis, considering he plays for the University of Indiana. There's a kid up there named Wes Martin, their left guard. Folks, get up on YouTube and pull up a tape on this kid. Look at him in the weight room. He did 61 freaking reps, guys. I mean, the teams are coming in and working him out at center. Also, if you want to talk about a combo guy in day 3, can't pronounce his name, but the Great Dane down at Arkansas, Froholt or something like that. I'm sorry, my Viking lord just doesn't let my Brooklyn accent get it out. But this is a guy that started out at center for Arkansas. He was a defensive tackle when he came over from Denmark, which was only 3 years ago. So this is a guy that's still raw, still developing. However, in number 52, if I see a Greg Little from Mississippi who is a perfect dancing bear, that's my right tackle. If not, if Dalton Reisner's out there from Kansas State, oh, my God. You talk about a guy with the nasties. I look at Dave DeCastro and I say that is their best offensive lineman. Why? Because he is true aggression. That's what you get out of Reisner. But with Reisner, he started at center. He started at right guard. He started at right tackle. Put me in, coach. I'm ready to play John McCaffrey sitting on the sideline strumming on his guitar.
All right, what about the left guard that's had some injury issues there out of LSU? The Steelers brought him in for a visit day before yesterday or yesterday. I forget which one. Tell me a little bit about him.
Well, you're going to give me a name over here, buddy. You're talking about 800 guys, and I'm looking at my LSU list. I have no prospects on their offensive line.
Garrett Brumfield.
He's a little bit like his dad. I think he'd probably be a late round draftee or so. I mean, I'm more excited about a kid in round 3, round 4, like a Connor McGovern, who I could play a guard or center, or the nasty man himself out of Charlotte, and that's Nate Davis. I look at Michael Jordan from Ohio State. This is another guy that I could play at multiple positions, but you're not going to find a better sixth man out there than the guy that played left tackle last year for Wisconsin, and that's Michael Dieter.
Yeah, Dieter's one of those big-time.
Please don't let me pronounce the right guard's name. You're going to have to do it itself. I just call him eye chart Bo Benjer. But that's another good quality guy, and he's been parked over a right guard. Look at Dave Edwards. Here's another guy on day 3 that has a lot of experience starting at right tackle. If I'm looking for some quality on day 3, these are guys that I'm looking at. If I'm looking for a super sleeper out there, I'm going down to Jacksonville State for B.J. Autry, or I'm going with the Charlotte kid, Nate Davis. Nate Davis, to me, could be the next Larry Allen.
Alex, like Nate Davis. You got anything else?
Yeah, I just had 2 other quick questions. Nate Davis has the weirdest stance, though. That dude sits 2 inches off the ground. But I want to go with quarterback. I know it's a position the Steelers aren't going to take, but I have to ask you about the first-round look. I have 2 quick questions for you. 1, is Kyler Murray a lock for number 1 for Arizona? And 2, how high will Daniel Jones go, and will he become a New York Giant?
Okay, 3 days ago I would have said he was a lock because his agent came into town over here, and usually you don't see a kid coming in with his agent, and you would assume all of a sudden, okay, he's a lock at number 1. But if he's a lock at number 1, and knowing Kyler Murray, how he's controlled everything out there, no, I'm not working out. Oh, yeah, I'm 110% for baseball. Thank you very much. That was a nice $421,000 in my pocket. I'm not giving back. Here I'm turning around and looking at this guy now showing up at the Giants complex, now showing up at the Redskins complex. If they actually were going to take him number 1 and the agent was in town, they would have done the deal, and I'm sure that Kyler Murray would not have gone on his little road trip.
Mm-hmm. What about Daniel Jones? Is he going to become a New York Giant, and can he be a top 15 kind of guy?
If he becomes a New York Giant over here, we'll be mired in mediocrity for the rest of our days. Daniel Jones is the most overrated quarterback in this draft, not named Dwayne Haskins. Now, here's the thing with Dwayne Haskins, and I kept telling the teams, and they finally went back and looked at it. This kid is a home run threat. I agree with that, but look at the 4 wide receivers he had. All of those guys were over 1,000 yards receiving. Mm-hmm. You're looking at this kid over there. Okay, he had 50 TDs. Is this kid the second coming of Darryl LaMonica? Would that thing really fit into the NFL culture right now? You go with those long balls like that, man. Those cornerbacks are going to be playing cannibal on you. Yum, yum, eat 'em up. INTs all over the place. Here's 2 factors that I told people to look at on Haskins. Out of 129 colleges, Ohio State was 115th in red zone success. They were 119th in converting third downs. I'm sorry, in the NFL, I need a quarterback that can move chains. And besides, 5 minutes into his pro day workout over there, he shouldn't have been drinking from the water bottle. His shirt alone, he should have just wrung it out and drank from it. I look at the kid's body. Who's he remind you of? James Harris. Big, tall, nice arm, but he just looks like 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. That's the way he moves in that pocket. I'm not going for Dwayne Haskins. Whoever goes for this guy, they'll have Jamarcus Russell without the head issues.
How many total quarterbacks go in the first round this year, Dave?
I say there'll probably be at least 3, possibly 4. My big thing is watching what Miami does. Miami's in desperation mode right now, and the Jets are playing Henny Youngman. Take my number 3 pick, please. That's where I think you're going to see more action for someone moving up for a quarterback. They say the Giants are going for a quarterback. I say no. They're going D. That's the way they're going to go. The quarterback that I would take after Murray in this draft, I would be locked on Drew Lock. I see Drew Lock possibly being a top 10 pick if Denver is not able to trade up, but Denver is trying desperately to move up to either get Devin White or Hawkinson itself. So Lock could possibly slide, and here's the shocker for you. Cincinnati has been doing a lot of homework on him. If I'm Andy Dalton right now, I'm having that Mayflower mover put into my speed dial.
All right, one other question for me, and it's a conversation Alex and I have had, I think, more than once this offseason, but and it's not really about one particular prospect. Obviously, you keep going back to the tape when you evaluate any of these prospects, but, you know, where do you fall in on, you know, having athleticism, such as a guy like Devin Bush, but it not showing up so much on the stat sheet? I mean, let's face it, Devin Bush, you turn on the tape, you can see why the sideline to sideline and the athleticism and the tackling ability of why he's probably a first-round pick. But do you at all get concerned with any prospects, Dave, when you don't, and look, I'm not saying to stat sheet scout, but I think you see where I'm coming from here. Why sometimes is there a concern where you see the athleticism, but you don't see the production on the field?
Here's the thing. You got to look at the scheme they play in. Like case in point, Case Winovich over at Michigan. He had free reign into the backfield. Why? Because he lined up next to Rashawn Gary. Rashawn Gary handled the multiple blocks and everything. Oh, well, Rashawn Gary only had 9.5 sacks during his career, so he must suck. I think that we become so much fantasy football stats generated that we don't see the picture. My reports to the teams, I'll show them the stats inside the stats. Well, here's Rashawn Gary. You say he only had 9.5 sacks, but here's a guy that caused 54 quarterback hits in the last 2 years. On those 54 quarterback hits, 48 of the passes that were thrown by that quarterback, only 14% were completed. You got to look at what they do in the scheme that they're in. I'm not worried about statistics at college. I'm worried about, is this kid going to produce in my scheme? Obviously, if I walk into a store and I see a great pair of shoes, but the only size left is size 6, am I going to squeeze my toe in that? Hell no. I'll go get myself a comfortable pair of size 10s.
All right, let me play a true or false with you here on one particular prospect. True or false, Mac Wilson will be drafted outside the top 50 picks in the draft?
Possibly. I see him go in round 2, but I see him going later in round 2. Possibly could even slide into 3. I think what you're going to see as far as the linebacker goes, the law firm of Devin & Devin will go first. Then it will probably be Mac. But right after Mac, that's where Pratt comes in. That's where Vasien Joseph, because he's a good cover 2 guy, I would much rather see him move outside. Those guys will go off the board. The Cashman will be the type that will come up in day 3 and end up being somebody's darling on draft day.
Alex, do you have a true or false for him to close things out?
I guess I'll ask this kind of in the same vein what you were talking about, Dave. True or false, Dave T? Devin Bush will be there at pick 20 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Sounds like false.
False.
You say you think 11 was Cincy?
Someone in the top 13 will take him. He'll be off the board. The thing is, as much as I like Devin White, if somebody takes him and moves into weak outside linebacker, it'll have the next Derek Brooks. Bush, I leave inside. But Bush, inside for me, I want him in a 4-3 scheme because I think he's smart enough and instinctive enough to play traffic cop. And at 3-4, he might give a little bit of weight to a veteran over there, and I think that would be a shame.
So for Pittsburgh at 20, you think if Byron Murphy's there, do you think he's going to be the guy, or can you give us another name?
Got to go Murphy. I mean, Look at Cleveland. Look at the receivers they got. Look at the division that you're in. You got a lot of big receivers there. I mean, the A.J. Greens and everything. Okay, he's not that 6'2" guy like a Greedy Williams, but at least this guy tackles. I mean, I look at a Greedy Williams. Everybody was in love with him. Now you look at boards. Greedy Williams is down 4th, 5th on a lot of the team boards at cornerback. Why? Because when you don't hit, you only go for the ball. That creates problems.
Dave, that's an hour. we could easily go another 2 hours, but that's not fair to you. And I think we'd wear our, I know we wouldn't wear our listeners out, but look, it's always great to have you on this time of year. You're nonstop. You obviously know these players inside and out, can talk about anybody. It always marvels us how you're able to speak about these players. And you're part of another podcast as well too. Why don't you kind of fill us up to speed where people can find you and let you do a little promotion here?
Doing a podcast with CNN's Paul Crane. It's called Scouts Honor. If you get up on iHeart Radio, Spotify, or anything, they're there. We're actually doing a show out of Atlanta on Sunday, this Sunday coming up. It'll be a 4-hour draft show. I'll have details up, but if you go over to Scouts Honor, we'll have some stuff over there. But, hey, guys, you got to understand one thing. You dudes have been one of my boys for years. You know, I like helping people out, but I look forward to coming on this thing because I got a lot of Steeltown blood in me, man. So it's always a pleasure to talk with you two.
Dave, if you only knew the level of cult hero status that you have with our listeners over the years, like I said, you've been on the show since 2011 every year. When the calendar turns over to March, people start hitting me up in email and Twitter, and they start saying, when is Dave T coming on? So don't stop being you, and we hope another.
Well, I got some good news for you people. If you all remember that great draft site from years ago, NFL Draft Scout, that sort of fell by the gutter the last couple of years. Well, we bought them out, and we're coming back next year, and I'm bringing back the old gang. I mean, Chad Reuter, Rob Rang, myself, Scott Diamond over with NFL Countdown. We're going to bring in a lot of cronies over there, and we're not just going to do draft folks. We're going to do high school, college, and pro football on that site. Look for NFL Draft Scout to be relaunched again in June.
All right, Dave.
That is my go-to site. That made my day, Dave T.
Yeah, fantastic.
Well, I sent some info over to Dave, but in the next couple of days, I'm going to be shooting you guys over scouting reports because I want to get you guys geared up towards the Pittsburgh's philosophy and the reports that they've requested. So you'll be getting about 100 reports from me this week to sit back. But like awesome. I say, it's toilet reading. I mean, it's 60 to 100 pages on each guy. So make sure you take your cell phone into the toilet so you don't miss round one.
You don't have to twist my arm to do that. Dave, look, it's our pleasure as always, and we hope to be able to do this with you for the next 10 years as well too. Thanks so much for coming on the Terrible Podcast once again.
Thank you.
Peace out, guys.
All right, Alex. As usual, Dave T does not disappoint there. He's the type of guy, you throw one name at him, you get 5 names back. It just amazes me year after year how you just can't stump this guy.
Mm-hmm. And the knowledge and the recall is just insane. But I mean, the dude's he's just a good dude. He's just a nice guy. We talked to him briefly after we hung up, and he was saying, you need anything on draft day, call me. You have our number. We'll get you any information that you need. There's certainly no obligation to do that. But the fact he's just so willing to give that information in a world that everyone's so secretive about their information and everyone wants to hide their stuff and play close to the vest. Not Dave T, and we're certainly thankful for it.
Absolutely, we are, and like I said, we've had him dating back to I think 2011. We understand. Look, you don't have to tell us what time of year it is. You can always count on us getting Dave T's schedule for at least one pre-draft show every year, and we certainly do appreciate his time to spend an hour on an interview with us. Not a lot of people would do that, especially in his business there. So once again, we thank him.
And be sure to listen to his show that's on Sunday too, because that's going to be worth checking out. 4-hour draft show. Scouts Honor
podcast should be easy to find online there. All right, Alex, coming out of that, look, I mean, we have plenty of time. People will need to listen to that show 2 or 3 times. I know I'll need to go back and listen to it again to see what I may have missed as far as what he said. Let's close out the show with a few listeners here, or listener emails here. First from Jamie Joyce writes in, Jamie from Holly Springs, North Carolina. That seems to be a new name for us here, new location on the map. Hey guys, would you consider Juju to be a prototypical Z-type receiver? Secondly, could he possibly be the X moving forward? I always understood the X to be a true separation guy, which AB was clearly great at. Is that why we're not considering Juju to take over the X? Just looking at for clarity on what Juju is not before the draft gets here. Love the show, faithful listener for 3 years. Look, Jamie, we've kind of discussed this, Alex and I, briefly. Talking about could Juju move to the X, and I think really, look, you want to take advantage of a skill set of what a guy does best, and I think Juju is a big, kind of considered a big slot guy, is what he does best. Now, obviously, in 2 wide receiver sets, he's going to have to play outside more. And I think Juju earlier in the offseason said, he needs to improve his game on the outside. And I think that's what he meant by that, is whenever he does have to line up kind of more detached outside the hash marks, if you will, is becoming a better player on the outside. So it would be a bit surprising to me and probably to Alex as well, to see Juju become kind of a full-blown X.
Yeah, the biggest difference, or one of the biggest differences, is the amount of press coverage you see. As the Z receiver, usually you're on the same side as the tight end, and the tight end is going to be lined up on the line of scrimmage. You're going to be off ball, so you don't cover him up and make him ineligible. So you're getting a freer release. If you're 3-by-1 backside as the X receiver, that corner's rolled up on you because you're on the line of scrimmage. There's no space at all between you and the defender, and you have to be able to work off press. You have to be a great separator. Could Juju do it? Maybe in theory with practice, but he's just trying to get good at playing that Z receiver. They kicked him out last year, the second half of the year. He saw a big improvement, from year 1 to year 2 there, but I don't think he's ready, or it's best for him to make that jump to go to the X. Let him play the slot. Let him play the Z. Don't put him somewhere where he's not going to be best at, because you need Juju at his best in 2019.
From Babardi, who I think we have gotten a few emails from in the past. I got to hop on board with Dave's concerns on Devin's playmaking ability. The athlete is freakish. The instincts are marginal. He's not in the backfield. He has no impact in the passing game. Gets sealed on run, feels allowing the back consistently squirt through, gets fooled by misdirection. A lot of this is coachable, but not what I would want at 20th overall. Secondly, maybe a guy to cover a bit more is Dexter Lawrence, defensive lineman from Clemson. It's increasingly clear that perfect fit will not be at 20, and D-line depth is underrated need. Keep up the excellent work, fellas. Look, you heard us talk to Dave T a little bit about Devin Bush and the whole stats production versus scheme and all, which is obviously kind of the way the conversation ended that Alex and I had there. So personally, look, I know I'm against the grain here, Alex, but I still think there's an outside shot that Devin Bush is on the board at 20, and it's hard to see the Steelers bypassing him.
It's hard to see the Steelers bypassing him, but I'm going with AT on this one. I'm not worried about the production, and I don't like those odds at 20.
Yeah, we'll see. We don't have but 2 weeks to wait to find out on that. Andrew W. writes in, love you guys. I have a blessed weekend and know you are appreciated for everything you do. Roll on the draft and hopefully end this silly season. Peace and love times 2. Well, thank you, Andrew. No question there.
Thank you.
Just a comment there. Let's see. Oh, here's one that caught my eye from Jonas. Jonas, I'm going to mispronounce your name here. Jonas Block Anderson, profile request on a Dane, and it's funny that we get this on the heels of what Dave T just talked about. So I'm going to read this because I know Jonas is probably thrilled at this point if he's listened to the podcast and heard Dave T talk about one of the players he's asking about. He says, I'm a longtime listener and Steelers fan from Denmark. How about that, Alex? You're popular in Denmark. I bet they sell. Nice. I bet they sell fatheads of Alex Kozora in Denmark. There.
They're not selling well. They are.
He says he faithfully listens to the podcast, enjoys the work you put in, as I like your approach to the Steelers in contrast to the national media, especially this offseason with all the drama. I really like what Ramon Foster tweeted out recently, though. Really a class act. We agree with you there, Jonas. Well, what I wanted to talk and ask about the upcoming draft, he says it might seem like an odd question to ask you guys regarding a specific day 3 interior offensive lineman, as the later round prospects do not garner that much attention and not in our situation with a great offensive line. However, this is the year the first Dane might be drafted ever, and I would like to know if you had watched anything on, how do you pronounce his name, Alex?
I don't have a Brooklyn accent to blame, but I can't do it either.
Heidi Froholt, is that anyway from Arkansas? Dave T just talked about him. So Jonas is a guy I need to go watch a lot more. To be honest with you, I don't know that too terribly much about him, but I know you have to be thrilled to hear Dave T out of nowhere. That's the thing about Dave T, is he can take these guys, these late round interior offensive lineman and spit out quite a bit about him. Jonas goes on to write, I know it's a long shot, but I couldn't think of a better way to hear how he stacks up against competition and of his chances of making it in the NFL, because everyone here in Denmark is so excited for him. I know you have a lot of profiles to make and a great job with that. We'll see if we can get him fit in, Jonas, here in these last couple of weeks here. If you don't get time to discuss him, don't worry. I'll eventually get my answer when the draft is complete. Other than that, I would just like to say keep up the great work. as it spreads joy here in Denmark as well. Regards, Jonas Block Anderson. Jonas, thanks for that email. Like we say several times, we do this thing, and sometimes we take for granted, the amount of listeners that we have and just how spread out they are worldwide. So to get an email on a Friday from a listener in Denmark, boy, that means a lot.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and we'll try to get them. I know we've talked, us and the guys that write the profiles, to let's hit out some day 3 offensive linemen before the draft approaches. We figure the Steelers will take one, but I'm glad Dave T mentioned them.
And we have run long again, but I'm sure nobody has issues with that. In fact, I'll end with this email right here from Jeff Berg. Jeff writes in, "Hey, y'all, don't worry about the podcast length. As long as the content is good, all is good. Thanks, Jeff Berg." Jeff, appreciate that, and that's probably the best way to kind of end this show on that note. I'm sure several of you are going to listen to this thing 2 or 3 times through to hear what Dave T had to say. Once again, we appreciate Dave T, Thomas, for coming on for the annual Dave T podcast. I mean, that no other way to classify it other than that. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. You can follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. You can follow the show at Terrible Podcast. You can email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. Do you like what we put together here for you on the podcast? If you'd like to help the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com and hit the donate button, upper right navigational bar. Additionally, if you would like an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com, go to SteelersDepot.com and hit the ad-free button, upper right navigational bar. For $25 for 1 full calendar year, you can have an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com. And with that, thank you everybody for listening. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.